Across ancient settlements, burial sites, and long-lost timber structures, archaeologists keep stumbling on the same puzzle wooden beams, posts, and planks that should have crumbled hundreds of years ago are still intact. In places where the climate swings between soaking rains, harsh winters, and humid summers, some of this timber has held its shape for centuries. These cultures were working without preservatives, without treated lumber, without power tools, and yet their wood survived. When you trace the evidence far enough back, you discover a method that many ancient builders shared, from northern Europe to East Asia and across early Mediterranean workshops. It was simple, it was low-tech, and it was brutally effective. This video is about that method, an old-world approach that our ancestors used to keep timber standing long enough for generations to pass beneath it. And by the end of this guide, you'll know exactly how it worked and how you can apply the same principles today. The ancient approach began by changing the wood's surface biology instead of merely coating it. Ancient carpenters understood long before modern science confirmed it that rot isn't just about moisture, but about how wood stores that moisture. Timber rots when water gets in and stays in long enough for fungi to colonize the cells. The trick wasn't to keep wood dry, which is nearly impossible outdoors, but to make sure water couldn't remain inside the outer layers of the timber long enough to trigger decay. The ancient solution worked by altering those outer layers permanently, making them less appetizing to fungi, less absorbent, and more durable under stress. This wasn't a decorative flourish. It was engineering grounded in observation. The core of the technique was controlled charring combined with natural resin saturation. Now, this is really the heart of the ancient rot-proofing method. By lightly burning the outer surface of the timber, builders fundamentally changed its structure. You see, heat drives out water, breaks down the sugars fungi feed on, and carbonizes the outer layer into a material that actually repels moisture instead of absorbing it. But, ancient carpenters didn't stop at charring. While the wood was still warm, they sealed the surface with natural resins. Pine tar, pitch, tree oils, or even animal-based fats, depending on the culture and region. When these resins hit the warm, charred grain, they soak inward, filling the pores and creating a waterproof, flexible barrier that works with the wood rather than just sitting on top of it. In places where pine sap was abundant, the result was particularly impressive. Resin-rich tar created a waterproof skin that resisted insects, rot and swelling even in hostile climates. The reason so many ancient timbers survive underground or in damp soil today is because the craftsmen knew how deep that resin needed to go, and they knew it bonded best with heat. This method appears across multiple civilizations because it solved universal problems. In northern Europe, charred and tarred posts supported longhouses, granaries, and palisade walls for generations. In ancient Japan, craftsmen refined similar techniques to protect exterior cladding from monsoon rains. In the Mediterranean, builders used heat and resin to preserve ship timbers and dock pilings. These weren't isolated discoveries. They were parallel solutions to the same challenge: how to keep wood from rotting when exposed to earth, salt, rain, and constant weathering. Archaeologists studying Iron Age and early medieval sites often find post ends with a distinct blackened shell, still dense and intact, even when the surrounding soil is saturated. This is not accidental preservation. It is the result of controlled charring done intentionally by people who understood their materials deeply. Modern survivalists and builders can use this ancient technique with simple tools and huge benefits. The beauty of this method is that it doesn't require machinery, chemicals, or complicated steps. A modern homesteader building raised beds, fence posts, or cabin foundations can char the ends of their timbers over a steady bed of coals. The key is patience. The burn must be slow and even, just enough to darken the surface and lightly harden it. Once the timber is warm and the grain is open, a coat of pine tar or resin-based oil should be applied while the wood is still hot. The heat pulls the resin inward, creating the long-lasting protective layer that defines this ancient technique. Once cooled, the surface becomes incredibly resistant to moisture. Someone building a chicken coop, tool shed, or small bridge can use this approach to drastically extend the life of untreated lumber. Even simple garden tools, hammer handles, or walking sticks can benefit from a light char and seal treatment that hardens the surface and increases durability. This technique works particularly well for ground contact wood, the weakest link in most modern outdoor projects. The reason we stopped using this method has more to do with convenience than effectiveness. Once industrial wood treatments became popular, builders shifted toward pressure-treated lumber and synthetic sealants. Those products offer speed. They require no heating, no tar, no manual preparation. But they don't last as long, especially outdoors, and they often contain chemicals that leach into soil or break down under ultraviolet exposure. Ancient timber, prepared the old way, often outperforms modern treated lumber in raw longevity. What the ancients had was a method designed by necessity. Timber was valuable. Mistakes were costly. Rot was a direct threat to shelter and survival. Their solutions were slow but incredibly thorough. Rediscovering this ancient trick reconnects us to durable, low-tech building methods that still work today. For anyone passionate about history, traditional craftsmanship, or sustainable construction, this method represents more than a technique. It represents a mindset. Ancient builders looked at what they had, studied how nature behaved, and worked with it instead of fighting against it. Their approach produced wood that could survive storms, floods, winters, and centuries of use. And it still works. If you want more deep dives into forgotten engineering, ancient building techniques, and practical knowledge you can put to use today, subscribe to Relic Logic and share this with someone who respects real historical craftsmanship.